Welcome to the Explainer. We've all been there, right? You upload your sources to NotebookLM, hit generate, and boom, less than 2 minutes later, you're looking at a highly polished slide deck. Honestly, it feels like absolute magic. But then you start editing, and you quickly realize you're spending a grueling 40 minutes trying to painstakingly reorganize drifting charts, fix some really strange transitions, and correct disconnected endings. So today we're breaking down a comprehensive guide on the 5 mistakes that quietly wreck AI slide decks and exactly how you can fix them before your next big meeting. Let's just tackle this painful dissonance right out of the gate. Why do AI-generated presentations look so incredibly professional but end up feeling so empty? For the longest time, users blame their prompts. They rewrite, they regenerate, they kind of just hope the AI will finally guess what they want. But here is the hard truth. Weak AI presentations are rarely a prompting problem. They are a thinking problem. NotebookLM can generate a polished presentation in minutes, sure, but polished does not always mean persuasive. A lot of the time, we're basically asking NotebookLM to answer a question that we haven't actually answered for ourselves yet. Which brings us to this brilliant quote that perfectly illustrates our core thesis today. AI organizes information. You organize meaning. NotebookLM is absolutely incredible at structuring data, summarizing massive texts, and formatting slides. But it cannot decide what your audience should believe, what they should remember, or what they should do next. As the human user, you have got to provide the intent that the AI inherently lacks. Ultimately, your judgment is what turns a generated presentation into a truly convincing argument. So, to resuscitate a failing AI deck, we're going to go on a diagnostic journey across 5 critical fixes. We'll define your audience, build stories, curate essential sources, diagnose the draft, and finish up with the skeptical review. Okay, let's dive into this and look at the first major hurdle. Mistake number 1, starting without a clear audience. I know it's incredibly tempting to just upload a bunch of PDFs and smash that generate button. But when you do that, you haven't actually defined success for the AI. And that's exactly why you end up with drifting charts and disconnected endings. You didn't tell it who it was talking to, so it just tried to talk to literally everyone. To fix this, you need to use the highest return 5 minutes of your entire workflow. Before you feed a single document into NotebookLM, open up a blank document and write down these 4 distinct lines. First, name a specific audience group, and no, everyone doesn't count. Second, the meeting objective, what actually needs to be decided or understood when the meeting wraps up. Third, a 1-sentence takeaway. Try finishing this sentence. By the end, I want the audience to believe. And fourth, the required evidence. List only the facts that support that exact conclusion. Doing this gives the AI a clear, totally unambiguous path before the generation even begins. Moving right along to mistake number 2. Building slides instead of a story. Here's the thing. NotebookLM rarely produces a genuinely bad individual slide, but it very often produces isolated, completely disconnected ones. Every slide holds up perfectly well on its own. You've got an accurate summary here, a relevant chart there, but somewhere around slide 6, the momentum just dies. Your audience is left staring at the screen with plenty of information, but absolutely no direction, simply because you've just assembled facts into a pile. The correct approach is totally different. An audience experiences a presentation as a running sequence of internal questions. That sequence forms a story. You want to line up questions that mirror your audience's natural internal curiosity. Let's simulate that internal monologue real quick to see how a story actually builds. As your audience is sitting there, the very first thing they're going to ask themselves is, why does this matter? A good deck doesn't overwhelm them with a wall of data immediately. It answers this exact question right away. And that answer should instantly trigger their next logical thought, which is usually something like, okay, sure, so what's the evidence? This is absolutely crucial. One slide should exist solely to create the reason for the very next slide to appear. So the slide answering why it matters naturally begs for proof, which leads right into your evidence slide. And once they see that solid evidence, they're going to think, all right, what happens next? Listen, if a slide in your deck doesn't answer an audience's logical next question, it needs to be cut entirely. I don't care how polished or pretty it looks. Forget about your slide titles for a second and just try writing down the 6 questions your audience needs answered before they'll accept your conclusion. That sequence of questions, that's your true outline. Which brings us to mistake number 3, uploading every single document you have. We've got a massive more is better fallacy when it comes to AI. We all kind of think that feeding it more context will magically yield a smarter, more comprehensive result, but the AI doesn't automatically distinguish between nice-to-know background material and hard, essential evidence. It treats a crucial primary report and some random tangential background doc as equally important. To fix this comprehensive but totally unfocused mess, try using this brilliantly simple sorting framework before you upload anything. Think of your sources in 3 buckets. First, you have your essential sources, things like final reports, primary data. The deck literally cannot exist without these. Then you have helpful context, prior decks, maybe some background reading, and finally, noise, duplicates, old drafts, wild tangents. You strictly want to upload only the essential bucket first. This forces NotebookLM to act as a highly focused briefing package designed to explain one core story, rather than acting as a digital junk drawer for every file on your hard drive.
Let's look at mistake number 4, treating the first draft as finished.
Look, when you get a deck that looks genuinely professional right out of the gate, it is incredibly tempting to call it a day and just hit export. But remember what we talked about. NotebookLM can generate a polished presentation in minutes, but polished does not always mean persuasive. We need a major mindset shift here. Stop judging the first draft's visual polish and start using a rigorous 5-question review to stress test your logic. The first draft is not the result, it's feedback. Ask yourself, is the destination obvious? Does the story actually move forward? Where would skeptics interrupt? Is it actually interesting? And most importantly, what can disappear? A really fantastic trick here is to read the deck backward. Start at the final slide and ask yourself if the conclusion is truly earned by the evidence shown earlier. If someone only saw the last slide, could they state your recommendation? It's a phenomenal way to break the illusion of flow and spot missing logic before you waste time tweaking fonts and colors.
And now for mistake 5, which is one we all make under pressure: exporting without rehearsing. We often forget that the presentation file was never the final product. The meeting is the product. Those moments where your audience actually stops taking notes because something finally clicked, that's the real goal here. You've got to rehearse the reasoning behind the slides so you're ready for real-world interruptions. If someone jumps in, you need to be able to answer their question and seamlessly continue the story without losing your place. To help with this, we have what I think is the most powerful tool in the arsenal: the Skeptical Audience Review Prompt. This is the ultimate stress test, designed to catch weak claims and hidden contradictions, and you run it directly in NotebookLM against your exported deck.
Picture yourself as that arms-crossed, notoriously tough executive sitting at the very end of the conference table. You're going to feed the AI this exact prompt. Imagine you're the most skeptical, hardest to convince person in this meeting. Read the attached slide deck and tell me, which recommendation is least convincing? Where would you interrupt to ask for more evidence? Which slide feels disconnected from the overall argument? And what assumption does this deck make without ever stating it? Running this prompt is literally like having a brutally honest rehearsal before you ever step foot in the actual room. So what happens when you actually apply all these fixes to a messy deck? Let's take a quick look at a tangible mini case study. Check out this massive transformation. A real-world, research-heavy NotebookLM deck went from a sprawling 34 slides down to a lean 21 by clearly defining the audience up front, ruthlessly removing duplicate sources, reading the slide titles as an actual story, and running that tough skeptical review. A wandering, bloated draft was stripped down to something highly persuasive. And the biggest change wasn't the visual design. It was that the final recommendation finally appeared only after the evidence had actually earned it. To make this actionable for your own workflow, here's your final checklist. You honestly might want to grab a screenshot of this right now. Before your next AI presentation, make sure your audience is specific and the one-sentence takeaway is written out. Ensure your sources are sorted and your slide titles tell a coherent story all on their own. Check that the evidence actually supports all major claims. Cut those unnecessary slides. Ensure the skeptics are answered. And make sure you rehearse for the meeting itself, not just the file. This checklist is exactly how you bulletproof your workflow. We'll leave you with this provocative final thought. NotebookLM can absolutely build a presentation, but is it a presentation worth giving? AI radically reduces the time required to build a slide deck, but it cannot decide whether the presentation actually matters. That remains your job. Your judgment, your intent, and your curation are what turn an empty, polished presentation into a truly convincing argument. Next time you open up the tool, just remember, you organize the meaning and let the AI organize the information.